Morning, everybody. Welcome to Hometown Cable and what's going on here. Calvin Castine has the camera. I'm Bob Then, and the young lady on my left is Donna Frenya. We've met her before. Calvin did a show called Carbo Creek Critters, something that he did with Business Beat. What was that part of, Calvin? Part of like a business beat? Oh, it's not really a business.
It's an interview.
Interview, because it was very... And Donna, tell us a little bit about Donna Frenya. Where are you from, and why should we know you?
Well, I live here in Coopersville now. Originally, I'm from out the other side of Malone, but I've been living here in Coopersville for about 22 years.
Married to?
Married to Larry Frenya, and we have two children, Tara and Lisa. Lisa's married. Her name is Gupao now, and she has two children, so I'm a grandmother.
You're a grandmother. You want people to know that out there? You do. All right. Somewhere along the way, you got into a very interesting, I don't know if you can't call it a business, but avocation here, a hobby, so to speak, with wild animals, birds, and so forth. Tell us about how that happened. And
Well, to tell you when I was first interested was probably from the time I could walk. I played with everything from the time my mother placed me out and was unable to walk, apparently from snakes to whatever. My father was an avid hunter, fisherman, trapper, and so forth, and he frequently brought home wildlife, and I would take care of it to the best of my ability, at that time. I can't ever remember a time that he didn't have animals around me, and frequently, they were wild animals. So.
Okay, you remember we went up and did the Indian Museum up on Chiota. Well, it was Donna that arranged that for us, and we had a great, enjoyable 2 hours plus there, seeing all of the Native American relics. And I think you mentioned either on the trip up or there, you are part Native American?
There is some Native background, yeah.
Okay, and that's one of your loves for animal and nature, probably?
Could
Hard
be,
to say?
I don't know, it's hard to say.
All right, so how did you get into where you actually board or keep with no income, but when did you start keeping animals at your place?
Well, many years ago. The first time was actually a young raccoon that was, I don't know if you'd call it was injured. I think it suffered from a condition called osteomalacia, which simply means that it hadn't been fed properly, and so that the bones didn't develop properly. The nose probably had a fracture in it, and there may have been some hip deformities. And when I asked for a permit to keep the raccoon, I was told that there were no legal permits at that point in time, and that I should apply or take an exam and become a wildlife rehabilitator if I was interested in that type of thing, which I did. And I just have been doing it ever since, and it's just grown and expanded.
It's called the Wildlife Rehabilitator?
You're right. I mean, that's the term that people use.
What made you think you needed a permit the first time? If I saw a raccoon, I wouldn't think I needed a permit.
Well, I didn't until people started telling me, and I was getting a few calls from some local people asking they had this wild animal or they had that, and what should they do, and so that's really how I got into it.
So over the years, now one of the reasons Calvin had come, you were releasing a little fawn, I believe, at the time, huh?
Yeah, we've released quite a few. The last time I think was two, a little buck and a doe. I think that you went with us.
Okay. One of the reasons we're here today, of course, is because this, I can't call it a wildlife shelter, but the rehabilitator has had a very unusual experience in the past, this in 1995. Tell us about what, I'm talking about the owl, so tell us about how that all came about.
Well, I got home one night quite late and found a message on my answering machine from a gentleman in Altona called Mr. Graves. Returned his call, and he said he had an owl. He wasn't quite sure what type it was, but it had been struck and injured the day before. He had taken it into his garage thinking that maybe it would just recover and he'd be able to let it go. And it hadn't recovered. And so he wanted to bring it that evening. So about 9:30 or 10 o'clock that Sunday evening, he brought the owl to me. It was a little barred owl. Little medium-sized for owls, I guess. And I have had some experience with birds of prey, but not a great deal. And I'm very fortunate in that there's a gal on my license by the name of Diana Stahl. And she's a senior at SUNY in Plattsburgh. She's had experience at a raptor center in Ohio where they do about 2,000 raptors a year. And so I called Diana and asked her to come out and asked her to stop on the way and talk with Dr. Karen Furta, who does my volunteer work at Palmer Veterinary Clinic, and get me a drug called dexamethasone, which I knew we were going to need. So she did that, and when we assessed him, we knew that he had a concussion. We started him on injections of dexamethasone. Later that day, Dr. Karen Furta came out and examined the bird. And we felt we were dealing at that time mostly with a concussion and that, he might improve and get better.
Probably got hit by a car or something.
Yeah,
We probably
he was
thought.
found by the road.
Uh-huh.
So he did begin to improve, and I placed him in an outside cage where I have, a tree in the cage and some perches and that type of thing. And after a day or two, we noticed the light reactivity in his left eye seemed to be getting worse. In other words, it wasn't as reactive to light as it had been. The pupil had been sluggish in that eye, but we felt that it was due to the concussion and that the medications we had him on, that would clear
Uh-huh.
up. But it seemed to get worse instead of better. So at that point in time, I called a veterinarian in Saranac Lake Placid area, actually in Raybrook, by the name of Dr. Nina Schock. And Dr. Nina is also a wildlife rehabilitator and has had quite a bit of experience with birds of prey. And I took him up there on a Saturday for her to assess him. And she felt, after looking at him, with the ophthalmoscope, that he probably suffered from a detached retina. And if he did, would be unreleasable. And an animal that beautiful is hard to think of, being unreleasable.
Let me
I
just
could-
interrupt you here before you get any further. Now, how do you carry this bird around during this time? Are they likely to bite very much? Are they?
Well, the worst part of any bird of prey are their talons,
Oh, yeah, all right, yeah.
which can be very destructive. There are some stories of great horns actually killing a man.
A man, is that right?
The talons are very very strong, and they're like a system of levers.
Mm-hmm.
And once they attach, they don't unattach easily.
They probably wouldn't attack unless there's a reason.
No,
correct?
not as a reason. Well, great horns apparently have. There have been stories of them if you're around their nest site at a particular time. But barred owls are not nearly as aggressive as that. And he was an excellent patient. So.
Okay, let's take a short break here while we'll get back to Dr. Nina Nina, her last name?
Nina Schock.
Shock in Lake Placid area. We'll be right back. Subject this morning is Donna Frenya and particularly owls. And before we get back to the owls again, we know that, are they endangered?
Well, there are certain owls that are. This particular owl is not endangered in the state of New York. Barred owls are endangered in the state of New Jersey. He's not frequently seen here because they live in the conifer, the large conifer forest. But he's not. They say we have quite a few in the Adirondacks.
Have you any idea how many different types of owls there are? Different.
No, because there are a lot of different types of owls in
Species.
different areas.
Okay.
And
And we know. Can you deal in owls?
deal.
Well, can you buy or
Oh, no.
sell? You can't even sell legally a stuffed owl,
No.
right?
No.
You can't do anything. If you have it, you can have it. There's no law against having it, but you can't get rid of it. It was a situation, if you remember, several years ago, where there were 3 owls that were taxidermy. I hate to say stuffed, but stuffed owls up in Tupper Lake, and they were advertised in the paper, part of the auction. And the auction went on, and 3 people in the area bought the stuffed owls. And then one of the conservation department worked for the federal government, heard about it, saw it in the paper, and went up to find out who got them, and then proceeded to get the 3 owls. And told people they'd have to turn them in, even though they had bought them. And of course, they had no idea that it was in violation. One of them, of course, the famous thing in the paper was our Judge Bob Feinberg at the time. They went in his house and wanted to take his owl out of his house, and there was a little problem there, if you remember. Donna, we're back up with Dr. Nina up in Lake Placid. What resulted up there when she found out you thought there was something with the retina?
She felt that there was a possible detached retina, and if that was the case, then he would be unreleasable because owls need their sight so much, in killing their prey. So at that point in time, as a nurse, I know there is a cure for detached retinas if you're lucky, and that's laser surgery. So that evening, about 8:30 on a Saturday night, I decided I would call Dr. Dallin. My husband thought I was crazy, but as soon as I got through his answering service, which took about 15 minutes because she kept insisting that he was a people doctor, not a human doctor, and he was very receptive to the idea and had me bring the owl down the following day, which was Sunday at 10 a.m. He spent about 30 minutes examining him and decided that he did, pardon me, indeed have a detached retina in the left eye, and that the only hope for the owl's, release would be the surgery, which he offered to do. And of course, I was more than willing to have him do.
Now, does he have to get permission to operate on an animal
No,
like that?
because he operated under Dr. Nina's
Okay.
license and tutelage.
Okay. Amazing.
So,
Now, that was when? When did this happen?
that happened in January.
In January. It was in the papers. Dr. Dolland's picture, and were you in the picture too? Yes. Yes. And the other one there was the owl, I guess. The story of this was very interesting, and was it one of the first times, that a doctor that was for humans?
They believe that it is, yeah. There are going to be some articles written. I know Dr. Dallin has been approached, and they have asked him to write some articles, on that, because that type of surgery really isn't known.
Is it known to
Owls.
veterinarians at all for owls that you know of?
Not that they're aware of. Dr. Dallin was in touch with a veterinarian in Minnesota, I believe probably a Dr. Redegg, who has done a lot of work with birds of prey and written some books.
This was all within the first week or so that all this happens after you got the owl?
Yes.
Okay. Then after you had the operation, did Bird stay with Dr. Dollin down, or did you bring him home?
No, he came home that day.
You say he. How do you know? Is it a he or a she?
Well, we believe it's a he because he's smaller than the species. The female in owls is usually the larger
Is
bird.
that right? All right. And did you know much about owls?
Well, what I had read, and I had handled some owls, but not a lot of them.
All right. So there came a time when you got to find a place to put this owl, right?
Right.
And this is the result right here. How did this building come about? This is a building that's probably close to 30 feet long, 25 anyway.
It's 32.
32 feet long, and it's probably all of 12 feet wide.
12 high.
12 high.
And 8 wide.
8. That's only 8 wide. Okay, 8 wide, and this is the home. And you must have saw fit to name the owl.
Yeah, during his surgery, they asked me what I was going to call him, and sometimes I don't name animals because they're going to be released again, and you hate to get that attached to them. But we decided he should be KD for the doctor that returned his sight.
KD.
KD, the initials of Dr. Shell Dallin.
Okay, and with KD, we don't know whether it's male or female, so it fits very well, right? When I heard Katie, I thought it was Katie, and I said, how do you know he's female, or she's female? And that's when it's K period, D period for...
Like Katie Courier.
We were looking at the building a little bit, but before that, off camera, you mentioned that you didn't realize for sure that it was going to be releasable.
Not at the time, until he had a follow-up visit with Dr. Dallin, at which time Dr. Dallin indicated he felt that at that time he thought he would have to operate again that day. But the healing was so remarkable in the owl's eye that no repeat surgery was necessary, and that he would be releasable.
On the same basis of a human's eye, as far as you know?
Well, they differ a lot in the way that they're set in the head and so on and so forth. But, I'm sure the theory behind the surgery is the same.
Just for a moment, when you think sometime of just killing any animal, small animal, any animal at all, for no reason at all, just think of the effort that's gone into KD by a lot of people to keep one species here alive, one animal, bird I should say in this case. And remember that when you just maliciously, they were talking about even a frog, right? You mentioned even a frog that someone was rehabilitating.
Yeah, I've got a friend that likes to do those types of things, frogs and turtles.
Yeah. All right, so then tell us about the cage then, or the home here. What happened?
Well, after he made his trip to Dr. Dallin, and we determined that he was releasable. I had a choice. I could either construct a cage, which I had hoped to do this summer anyway, a flight cage is what this is called, or I could take him to Lake Placid and flight him in Dr. Nina's cage for about 2 weeks and then bring him back here for release. So I asked Rodney LaValle, who is on my license as an assistant and has built my cages, to give me a price, roughly. And he said, oh, $250 to $500. And he said he would construct it if I would provide the funds. So I thought that wasn't as bad as I had envisioned, and I went to Gregory Supply to get some pricing. And having remembered me from being a registered nurse, I knew some of the people in there. They immediately offered some help, and they actually donated the treated lumber that you see, the 2x4s.
Yep.
There was about $300 and some in treated lumber because I wanted an environmentally safe one, the new type of treated lumber that's out called ACQ. The rest of it was pretty much out of pocket and did come to a lot more than $500, well over $1,000.
Are you still nursing?
Yes, I still work part-time.
And some of your money goes
into... Right.
Well, we all have different kinds of hobbies, right? Now, my first question would be, you're getting ready to release KD. That's a pretty big unit to just have around and not ever use again. You aren't going to get an owl every day. Come on.
No, no, but I have an additional bird of prey right now at the time as we speak, and I have had one other one in late January. So I'm sure that others will follow, and the cage will be used for several,
Could you also
for
put
years.
like a fawn in there?
Well, you could, but it's really meant to be a flight cage.
Okay. You see, you got to, I guess, the reason it's not wire is because you want it to be dark a little bit.
No,
No?
the reason is the 1x3s are to protect the feathers of the bird. If the feathers come up against wire caging, it damages the feathers. And this way they can flight back and forth and it won't damage the feathers. Now I'm hoping to put wire on the outside later on as I can afford it. And that will allow me to flight things in there like songbirds, passerines, that type of thing. I did bluebirds last year and barn swallows.
You don't never know. There may be some people out there who are bird lovers that may decide that they would like to make some donation. We're not asking you to, hey, send some money here, but if you have so moved, the name is Larry and Donna Frenya in Cooperville under Champlain. Is Champlain number?
Yes.
Champlain number. And if you feel like you'd like to help out some way, it's just for the love of birds. And you probably would you ever keep animals in here, you think?
Well, I have other caging for mammals.
All right. And of course, it's locked so that there can be, you don't need any problems here, so that they open by mistake. You go inside?
Yeah.
He doesn't bother you?
No.
He wouldn't attack you in any way?
No, I don't think a barred owl has.
Yeah.
I mean, they have
Spell
that
barred.
ability. B-A-R-R-E-D.
Oh my, B-A-R-R-E-D, and there's also a barn owl you mentioned. All right. Barred owl. And then you said that's because of...
The bars across the breast line.
Okay. When's the last time you've touched a bird? He won't come to you, in other words.
No, I'm trying to think. I haven't really molested him, so to speak, since I placed him in here. And we'll be capturing him today to release him later.
You hope.
We hope.
You don't just walk in and say, come on, bird, huh?
No, we'll have to get up there.
You go up there, physically go up where he is?
We'll go up with a ladder and just...
Don't forget the towel.
And just towel him.
Towel him. Well, now someone's going to say towel him. They're thinking back when they used to be in sports and the showering and all the toweling. How do you towel a bird?
Basically, just put the towel over him.
Now, if their eyes are covered like, with hawks, will that calm him down?
It calms him down, and his wings are wrapped, and then once you get a hold of the feet and the talons,
you're all set.
You're all set.
All right. So you will attempt today to capture him, and once he's captured, what are your plans from there?
Well, I'll place him in a small dark box where he will remain quiet, and he will be returned back to Altona as close as we can come to the spot where he was picked up, because they're territorial birds.
And you feel that he's ready to go now. He can see and so forth.
Yeah.
That must be a great satisfaction for you. I mean, anyone who's this dedicated to a bird or any animals or birds must feel very good about this,
Yeah,
even though you won't see him again, you know.
always do, yeah. We're going to band him, so he will have a numbered band on him.
There won't be any transmit or anything like that.
No, just a band.
Uh-huh.
And if he, should he ever return or be found somewhere or something, we would have some input, some information on him.
Okay. I don't know what else I can ask you now. Here, do you envision much problem of getting him?
Getting? No,
Toweling him?
no, I
No,
don't
you
think
don't,
so.
huh? And so he stays up. He's up on the perch. You can't see him very well, but he's up on the perch. And has he ever come down while you were in the? He comes down.
Well, when I take his dinner in, it's placed in straw. It's live mice.
Yeah.
live
Now
prey.
here's a person who loves. Remember now, a little contradiction here. Loves animals and puts live mice in here to feed the live owl. Is that correct?
Yes, I do.
And they have to
Not
be
something I
live. They
enjoy,
won't
but-
eat.
When I
anything
first took him, he had to be force-fed because he was injured. And so
Uh-huh.
we actually had to open his mouth and force-feed him. And then we fed him killed mice, killed
Uh-huh.
prey. But as he began, he didn't really like killed prey when it was offered. He preferred the live because that's what he was used to. And I didn't want to get him used to the killed too much. So he would get a live mouse and a dead mouse and a live mouse and a dead mouse until he went into the flight cage. Once he was in here, he's never had, killed prey
Yeah.
again. It's always been live prey because that's what he's training for, is to be released.
Yeah, that's his main diet is mice.
Well, mostly. Yeah, now they will take birds too, small birds.
Uh-huh.
In fact, I take that back, he did get one, but it wasn't in here. Yes, it was in here. A bird struck my window, and when I went out to pick it up and rehabilitate it, it was deceased.
Uh-huh.
So it became KD's dinner.
Okay. There's a couple of mice in there that have been released, hiding under the straw in the corner, and when they come out to see what's going on, and if he's hungry, he's gonna take a flight now. What if after you've captured him and you brought him to Altona, you come back to go in your cage and you find 37 live mice under that straw over there? What are you going to think about that?
Well, I think I made a mistake.
Not too likely, huh?
No,
Not too
no,
likely.
I've observed him.
Well, the next question is, you don't have a lot of mice around your house. Naturally, you do have them in the field and so forth, but how do you get mice?
Well, when I first took him in, I went to the pet store in Plattsburgh and purchased them.
Purchased mice?
Purchased mice. And that gets very expensive when they eat 2 or 3
Got to
mice
raise the
a
price
day.
for the patients when she goes out nursing that way.
So I was fortunate enough that Dr. Nina Schock knew a pet store that had given her some mice very reasonable for some of her birds of prey. And so she took me there and introduced me. I think it's one of a kind pet store in Saranac Lake. And they have donated all of his mice since that time. So
Great. Great.
fantastic. The number of people that have,
Yes.
helped has been
And
terrific.
every person does a little bit. It isn't quite so bad for anybody, but it would be great, a lot for you. Okay, so we'll take a short break. We're talking with Donna Frenya. We're talking about KD. I don't know whether Calvin can see him, her inside or not. There's not much space in here. And
Did you want to get a
can
shot
you
of him
open
inside?
the top?
Well, I'll open the bottom.
Okay,
so
then he
doesn't
can.
slide
Okay.
out. Isn't he gorgeous?
I hope we got that on camera when Donna says, "Isn't he gorgeous?" And he certainly is. We've come inside of the, what do you call this again?
Flight cage.
Flight cage. Do they fly around much other than to get to the, they don't just fly long distances, do they, as far as you
Well,
know?
probably not.
They just
like
could,
migratory
Yeah.
birds or anything like that, but they have the ability to
Yeah.
fly
oh no, you say he's a relatively small compared to,
medium size.
medium size compared to some of the bigger owls.
Like a
huh?
great horned or
Great
a great
horned, yeah.
gray or something.
Uh-huh. There's the perch, couple perches there, and he spends most of his time up there,
Hmm
up on that perch.
He prefers that end to this end. I'm not sure why.
Uh-huh.
He spent 2 or 3 days on this one, and he
Uh-huh.
seemed to prefer that one.
Yeah, you can see the leavings on the ground. You can see where he spends his time down there. up in the air. And look at this cage. There's a lot of work in this cage, and he donated his time putting this up.
Right.
There's another person that should be remembered. Well put together. This is the treated lumber, you say, from Gregory's.
It's
Well
constructed so that it could be moved.
Uh-huh.
Because if I ever wanted to expand and put up another flight cage, they recommend that you do them in corridors and use one side of this cage for another one.
I see.
So
yeah.
that's why it's bolted together. So
I-
that if
I would assume that we have double because of a 4x4 would be more expensive than a 2x4 is put together, probably. And well constructed, great. Because he's been here in the snowstorm. Well, of course, he's in the
Oh,
snowstorms
yeah.
anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no problem
he's-
there.
well acclimated to climate.
Uh-huh. All right, you can see the doors here. Now, there's a ladder. That means you're preparing, you're practicing going up to towel him.
Well, that's how we'll get up to get him, I'm sure.
You look like you might need
I'll need a longer.
a longer ladder than that, or you're not going to towel his whole, all of it. Can you see his talons from there, Calvin? On the close-up? Yeah. Now, the talons, how many do they have on each leg? Do you know? Is it
Well,
3?
there's one on the back, and
Uh-huh.
then I think there's 3. You know, I never counted them
Uh,
on the front.
Okay. Well, maybe after seeing this, you could get your encyclopedia. I'm just going to maybe read a column or two if you're so interested. So dispose on owls a little bit. A lot of people collect little owls, you know, I mean...
Figurines.
Yeah, figurines, a lot of people. Pins, etc. Matter of fact, Bob Feinberg's wife, you know, she also was a collector of all kinds of little owls and door knockers and so forth. I know of him pretty well. My daughter was his secretary, and during this time, and of course they were kind of kidding him on some of this. All right, now this is a live branch you have right here. This is not one that was put up. That's coming from a tree outside right here, right? And it built right around it, right here. Right around.
And he does perch there, too.
He does. Okay, we'll take another short break. We're talking with Donna Frenya and listening to her great stories. I was going to say humanitarian. She's not. She's a birditarian and an animalitarian. You know, over the last 5 years, I've been involved in over 325 programs, and in none of those programs have I ever seen an owl pellet. We were coming out, and she wanted to know, and if I wanted to see an owl pellet, and I kind of hesitated when I was thinking of an owl pellet, but Donna, tell us about an owl pellet.
Well, it's really the remains, part of the remains of whatever they eat. And, you know, scientists can look at those and they can tell pretty much what an owl or any bird of prey that pellets like that has been eating and living on.
So they regurgitate, and this is the remains that they kept in a certain spot of their...
Well, they digest and then just regurgitate it back.
Yep. Now, do they feed their small offspring like this also, or do they just let the little one eat off the food?
No, they would help
tear them and give it to them. Yeah, small. Yeah. But those are owl pellets. Do you know how many of those would happen in a day, or it wouldn't be every day?
Usually one or so a day I'll find in there.
And you say you use these in when you're talking with people?
Yeah, for
classes, educational classes, yeah?
For children.
Well, it's a first. I've never even heard of an owl pellet, or even an eagle pellet, or any of the others.
Well, all birds don't pellet, but this...
Oh, all right. They don't all do. Which ones
owls do.
Owls do?
Yeah.
Well, now, if you didn't know that, you found that out because you're here on Hometown Cable.
We're the chicken pullet.
Yeah, chicken pullets. And when I think of sheep pellets, I'm not thinking of regurgitating either. And that's what we were thinking. But that is very unusual. And that's a normal size right there.
Yeah. Well, normal for his,
Yes.
for this bird.
And this would be the type of that would not digest well. Is that basically?
No, this is just the remains of
the
what
remains
he,
of what he... Huh?
what doesn't
Alright.
digest. Their bones and hair and so forth.
Yeah.
And it's necessary that birds of prey, when they're being rehabilitated, get this type of thing because they need to pellet. If they don't, there's something wrong with their digestive system.
I'm going home to my encyclopedia. I'm going to find a little bit more out about owls. Donna, what else can we talk about? Anything you want to tell us now? What do you expect for this owl now when it's being released? Have you ever released one before yourself?
Not an owl, not
Okay.
like this.
You know anybody who has?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you never know if it's successful, I guess. You never know what's going to happen to the owl after, but
No.
you expect it to be
We,
successful.
we figure it should be as good as new.
Yeah, he's just like a person coming back from the service, going to come back and see his family there. Do they run in pairs?
Well, probably some particular types more than others. They don't know an awful lot about owls like that. They do know that they're territorial, and they're probably mating in January, February. At this
Poor
time
thing,
of year,
he's here at the wrong time.
at this time of year, he would be sitting on a nest, or she, or whatever the
Yes.
bird is.
Yeah.
So it may well have a mate up there in Altona.
Going to be
that we're
ostracized when he
returning
gets back. She's gonna, the other mate's going to say, "Where have you been, KD?" Well, his real name is CAD. Is what it is. It's CAD. I've met the rest of the family.
to. Oh.
So you expect that I could very well get back with other owls up there. The others are wondering where. I don't know if owls wonder or not, but anyway, we got an owl that's going to be returning to the Altona area, and I think it's great. Donna, it's with the human interest story, and Calvin said, "Let's go over and talk to Donna." And, did you call Calvin about this being released?
Yeah, because he had said before that he was interested in that type of thing, and he had a tape of mine that he had been good enough to show on, if you wildlife in the springtime, just an educational type thing on people not picking up every baby and bringing it home, and it was some information that I wanted to get out to the public, and he'd been good enough to do that. So
Calvin's good enough to do that? Oh yeah, yeah.
So I was calling him anyway to see if I could get my tape back, because I'll be needing it for some programs.
Okay, we'll be right back. You're watching Hometown Cable. Bob Venn with the mic, Calvin with the camera, and Donna Frenya with all the information and the knowledge. And an owl pellet. You've watched Hometown Cable now for at least the last 4 or 5 years that I've been involved. You know we don't prepare, but off camera we were talking about, did we tell the people why there's straw in there, why I don't see the mouse running around, and there's a reason for that.
Well, we need to simulate what he would be hunting in the wild as closely as possible. So he would be hunting, field mice and different types of things that would be on the ground and more or less hidden. And owls hunt by hearing as well as they do sight. So to simulate that, we put straw in there and put the mice in the straw and let them hide. And gives him a challenge and prepares him to go back.
Yep, and now he'll go back and it will eventually team up, I suppose, with, do they run in pairs? Do you know that?
They're pretty much solitary, probably except for maybe, during mating season in the midwinter. And then when they're, nesting.
Have you any idea how old this owl is?
No, we just know he's an adult, or she, whatever.
Okay. This afternoon, this is the 16th of March. A couple of days before spring, you're going to go up to Altona area in the box, this dark box, and you're going to get out of the car. Calvin's going to be there with the camera, so you'll know what we're going to tell you.
And other news media will be there too.
Other news media is going to be there too, yeah. Not quite as important, but other news media will be there also. So I suppose it's, well, what do you think's going to happen? Then you'll see what actually does happen. You're going to do what? You're going to be in your car, and you're going to put the box down. Have you got? Then you open it and then move back? Is that what you do?
I'll probably, pick him up and put him on my gloved arm. And
You would. Gloved arm. You have a glove or something for your face?
No.
Do nothing like that. Huh? You don't expect that.
No, I don't.
This could be a first. All right. So then you expect him to fly away.
Yeah.
And because his wings, there was no problem with his wings or anything like that coming.
No, just owls frequently suffer concussions, head injuries, and eye injuries.
Have you seen him fly yourself in here?
Yeah.
You've seen him come down, huh? Okay. Anything else, Donna?
No, can't think of it.
Should I go as far as to say that if someone has an animal that's injured or sees something, they should contact you at least?
Myself or
why don't
another.
you do that right there? Tell them what.
Myself or another rehabilitator.
We
Yeah.
don't know who the others might be.
Well, they can call me at 298-5011, or their local veterinarians, or the Department of Environmental Conservation in Raybrook has a listing of all the rehabilitators in New York State.
Are there a lot of them in our county?
No, not as many as I'd like to see, particularly in springtime,
Okay. Particularly in spring. Why spring?
because that's baby season.
Did they fall out of
Well, various things happen, but you end up some years with a
Okay.
tremendous amount of
I guess,
orphan.
okay, what we do say is if you find an animal like this, don't try to bring it home and keep it yourself, right?
No,
That,
no.
that should not
And
be done.
usually the mom is right around and there's
Yeah.
no need to pick it up and bring it anywhere.
Okay.
You know.
Particularly now with the rabies coming back.
That's another thing. Don't forget the rabies, raccoon with the rabies and so forth, so be very careful of any strange acting animal. And if you don't know what strange is when an animal you think you would run from you runs toward you, it's time to move. That's about all I can say about that. Anything else, Donna, you want to
No,
tell
not
us
that I
about?
can think of.
Thank you very much again for consenting to be with us here and telling us this, I think, a very interesting and, what's the word I want here? Newsworthy, really, newsworthy operation here with a human doctor known so well, Dr. Dolan, that's performing a retina operation on an owl, and he must be he going to be there this afternoon? He's probably too
I
busy.
believe so.
He's going to be there. Well, isn't that great? Calvin can talk with Dr. Dolan this afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to Hometown Cable. There'll be more following this. I'll just say goodbye now. I will not be there this afternoon, but thank you very much, and your comments are appreciated. Your suggestions are appreciated, and probably not most of all, but very important, your contribution as a patron to Hometown Cable, $12 or more once a year would be very appreciated by Calvin and would keep this kind of program coming to you. We'll see you later, next Sunday.
A small gathering of interested people and media have gathered here on, I believe, what's still called Route 191. I can never remember if it's 190 or 191 that connects Altona to Scioto. But that's where we are. I was told that the KD would be released at 3:30, and as you saw, according to my clock on here, at 3:22 he was already in the trees, so we arrived here a little bit late. This is not a close-up of the owl that was just released, KD owl. This is a different one, and we're about to find out the story on this one here.
This eye that I'm putting the drops in now is probably totally blind in that eye. The main reason for putting they have a nictitating membrane that will come down and close the eye, but the ointment placed in it will still get spread over the eye, so it won't make any difference. And the ointment that's going in there is a triple antibiotic, and it has a touch of cortisone in it to act as an anti-inflammatory drug.
Okay, the people watching are going to be totally confused because we left the Scioto Altona area and went immediately to this scene right here. And we should first of all explain that this is obviously a much smaller owl and a different owl than the one we just witnessed. Does this one here have a name yet?
Well, at first I thought it would be Mikey because it was so close to St. Patrick's Day. But after weighing her at Dr. Nina Shock's, we decided, since she weighed in a whopping 98 grams, which is about 3 ounces, and that is large for a saw-whet owl, which is what she is, that probably it was a lady, because in the owl families, the ladies are much larger than the gentlemen, about a third larger actually. So she may not look too big there in my hand, but she is actually big for a saw-whet owl.
This is full grown.
This is a full grown.
And 3 ounces, so there must be a lot of feathers involved.
Quite a bit, yeah.
Because 3 ounces is 3 postage stamps if you were going to put her in an envelope and mail her somewhere.
Not very big.
So it wouldn't cost you all that much to mail this owl across the country. And Before we get into the story on this one here, Donna, we should probably explain just briefly to the viewers who sat with us for half an hour expecting to see Katie take off, and the next scene they saw was Katie sitting in a tree.
Actually, I owe Calvin an apology because that was my fault. I was a bit nervous with all of the publicity, not being used to dealing with press and that type of thing. And when we got there and Dr. Dallin arrived and a couple other cars, I think one was probably Channel 5 and one the guy from the press, someone said to me, well, everyone is here now, so you can release him. And he had just flown off when I saw Calvin drive up, and I nearly had a heart attack. And I really felt bad because it ruined Calvin's shot of him being released. So I offered him, in place of that, a picture of this little guy. We did not expose this guy to the press, though I had him in my car that day.
Yeah, you showed us this young fellow, or young lady,
because
when we were here.
Didn't want to stress the little bird. She's obviously probably going to become a permanent member of our family, and I'll use her, for teaching purposes, doing school programs and that type of thing. But she does have an appointment with Dr. Dallin tonight. She suffers from a concussion. She had a head injury, a lot of bleeding and bruising in the left ear, and the left eye is probably totally, she's blind in now. The right eye has not been too reactive to light. The pupillary reflex isn't that good. And so I've kept her kind of in a darkened area in my office so that you'll see she's kind of squinting her eyes now in the light, and I probably should put her back because she probably shouldn't be exposed too much to light till Dr. Dallin looks at her and decides what we're going to do with her.
Go ahead and do that, and we'll be right back.
What are your next questions?
What are my next questions? How'd you happen to get this new owl?
Well, I took a call at about 6:30 in the morning on Wednesday, which was the day before Katie's release. And I always say that my nest is never empty. So it was a guy from Lion Mountain Prison that I work with, and he said he had picked up a tiny little pygmy owl. And he didn't know what happened to it, but it was beside the road, so it probably had been struck with a car. And they offered to bring it to me, which they did. And at that point in time, I had some dexamethasone in the house left from when KD was treated. So we started immediately on injections of that and took him that same day to see Dr. Nina Schock in Lake Placid. And she diagnosed probably something similar to KD, only much more severe. So I did speak with Dr. Dallin the day Katie was released, and he has agreed to take a look at him. We feel that the left eye is gone, but hopefully if there's some sight, which we think there's some sight in the right eye, if there is a retinal tear, or if there's something that he could treat or deal with, he's willing to do that again. So of course we're willing to let him.
Now, with a human, you can have them look at an eye chart and get an idea of what their vision is. There's no way really of knowing how well the owl sees after this is done, right?
Well, Dr. Dallin would be able to tell from looking inside the internal eye. In other words, if there was a retinal tear or detachment, and after the surgery, a week or two later, he looks in and that tear is then reattached and healed, and there's no fluid that's leaked behind the retina, through the tear. At that point in time, you'd know that the vision had been restored, or at least some of it had been restored. There were blood clots in what's called the anterior chamber of both eyes, and so sight may be compromised anyway until those dissolve, or until they hopefully dissolve. And we may be waiting to do surgery until those go away too. Or then again, if there's no retinal tear, there may be nothing that he can do. Right now she's on an oral antibiotic called Baytril. She's on an oral prednisone, and she's on, like I said, the triple antibiotic eye ointment with a cortisone or steroid in it.
Now, is this a special eye ointment for owls or for birds?
Well, it's veterinary. What vets use. There really aren't too many specialized medications for
I wouldn't think there would be enough demand to make it so. This time when you held her, I didn't hear the clicking noise that we heard last week when we were here and you were holding her. So is she calming down, getting more used to you?
She's getting more used to people handling her. That clicking noise that you hear is really a stress, or they're unhappy for some reason. And obviously when I first took her in, she wasn't used to being handled, and that was stressful for her. So she's getting more used to it because I take her out twice a day to feed her and give her medication. But I don't handle her a lot right now. I mean, we're not 100% sure that she's unreleasable, about 99.9. But until I know 100%, I wouldn't be handling her a lot. But Dr. Nina at this point has pretty much said that she thinks I'm looking at an educational bird.
That you would use to bring around to schools and
to do
community groups and explain.
She's an ambassador of her kind, so to speak.
So that means you're going to have mice on your regular shopping list then every week when you go out to the Grand Union or whatever. You're going to have mice on your list.
Wildlife rehabilitators have strange things in their freezer. Carol Spirito was with me today when we did the program in Plattsburgh for the Kiwanis Club, and she explained to them that we have some very odd things like rats and mice and so forth, all marked in little, probably Tupperware containers or something in our freezer. I obviously have to have a special section and part of my freezer cordoned off and that type of thing.
So your husband Larry doesn't go in there and looking for a snack and grab the wrong container, does he?
Grab the wrong container.
Now, right now you're feeding. I know last week you were kind of force feeding the owl. Is she or he eating more by him or herself at the moment?
Well, actually, we started her on little pinky baby rats, and then switched her over to 1 mouse a day. She gets half a mouse in the morning and half a mouse at night.
Is this a regular full-grown mouse?
Yes.
How can something that weighs 3 ounces eat an entire mouse in one day?
Well, I have to cut it into pieces, believe it or not, and serve it to her.
But still, it seems like a lot of weight.
It does, yeah. But the books and manuals that we have say they eat from 1 to 1.5 a day is an adequate diet for them. Now, in the wild, a little softwood owl like she is will eat various things, from moths to different types of bugs to crickets. Some songbirds they have been found to eat, and some mice, probably, wood field mice, that type of thing. Though she's pretty much a bird that stays, they say, in heavy thicket areas or where there's, heavy conifer growth. And they're strictly nocturnal. That's why people very seldom see them. They hunt at night.
And they're very small. You wouldn't expect a bird that size to be an owl if you saw it floating around. You might even think it's a bat if you're dark enough.
Yeah, it's our smallest eastern owl. So she's, not too many people have ever seen one, so she's kind of a unique little thing.
Now, did you know right away? I'm sure the people who brought it to you probably thought she was a baby, but did you know right away it was full grown?
Oh yeah, you could tell from the feather colorations, and at this time of year there wouldn't be any babies out there anyway. So either she wintered in the area or she was migrating back through when she was held in the car.
Okay, so you're saying owls are migratory?
Some owls migrate and some don't. And Carol and I were talking about this today at the meeting, as to how you decide which ones migrate and which ones don't. Probably the ones that are established and the older ones that could control the territory, so to speak, might stay in the area sooner than, say, the young ones that really have to establish a territory of their own anyway, and they might be forced out during wintertime due to lack of food supply.
So the same species.
They might have to migrate south farther. But I don't think anybody knows for sure what that answer is. We just know some migrate and some don't.
So within the same species, so it's not like like geese where you expect them all to go, or robins or whatever.
Actually, even all of our Canadian geese don't go. We're seeing more and more that stay, and they don't know what the reason is. They think some of it is probably people feeding or more availability of farmers, the cut cornfields and open waters and so forth.
Okay, I hear a phone ringing. I'll let you answer that phone. Okay, we're back. Briefly, spring of the year. I know people in your avocation worry about people. I think we covered it a little bit when Bob was here. robbing the nest, so to speak, when they find a young one in the spring
Right.
that they think is in stress. Now this owl here is small enough that it's very possible if this were in the spring of the year when the baby owls might be that size, that maybe it could have fallen out of the nest. So you can't, could we assume that if we saw an owl like that it's automatically a problem?
Obviously not. Usually they're not. You know, usually anything you find on the ground, chances are there's a nest around. And unless you really know that they're orphaned, the best thing to do is to leave them alone. The DEC puts out some papers. In fact, I've got some right there. If you care, leave them there. And it's a real good explanation of, you know, so many people find baby fawns laying in an area or little birds that have fallen out of a nest. And if they've fallen out, just put them back in the nest. You know, it's a fallacy that the mother won't accept them. They will. We had some this last summer out here, a nest of robins, and I put some of the fledglings back in.
Okay, our battery died just as you were saying. You found some robins and you put the fledglings back in?
In the nest, yeah, a couple different times, and they finally ended up on the ground. And you know, Mom just comes and feeds them there for a day or so, and then they take off. So it's really not a problem.
Well, it's a problem until Tabby comes along.
And the main thing is to keep the dog and cat away, you know, and they'll do fine. They've been doing it for centuries. So.
Long before we got here, right?
Right.
And long after we're gone, probably. Okay, I think we've told the story of the owls, and are you hoping that you have a member of the family, or you must be split on this, probably, huh?
Well, at this point in time, I think we've pretty much decided that she's a permanent resident, and she is a charming little creature. I call her Precious, so I'm pretty sure she's going to be here anyway. But you always want to return everything to the wild that you can, because that's really where they belong, and that's what rehabilitation is all about. I'm not going to say it doesn't tug on your heartstrings, because it sure does, but if you go into it knowing that ahead of time, it helps a little bit to psych yourself for that, so to speak.
Yeah, that your mission is to get them back in the wild,
Right.
and so.
Not to make pets for us. I mean, selfishly, that would be very easy to do.
Well, if you'd kept every animal that you've rehabilitated right now, you'd
Oh my.
you'd be rivaling Park Safari, probably.
I should think so.
Okay, and maybe we'll see. Did we come up with a name yet? You haven't come up with a name yet, right?
We're not really sure. I've been calling her Precious and Ladybug
Precious?
and Mikey, and I don't know what she is. We think it's a lady, so probably we'll have to come up with a more suitable lady's name.
Okay, so
Maybe Ladybug.
if Precious, we'll call her for now, remains here. Next fall, would you be available to talk to schools and so on?
Sure, should probably later on this spring or this summer be available. I had some children that came last summer, and I'm trying to remember, I think from Northeastern, in a special summer program or something. And they came and we had a little talk, and they get question and answer period and that type of thing. I'm trying to remember what wildlife I had at the time, and I honestly can't remember. I know I had quite a bit, but I don't remember what it was.
So would you envision taking Precious to a classroom, or would you have the classroom come here?
Either way, she certainly, I used to travel around with the large raccoon I had, and she certainly would be a lot easier to transport. And once she is, I have had a chance to work with her, she should be a very good educational tool. And I'm sure the, kids would love her. She's so cute and a good ambassador of her kind, and way to teach about, environmental issues and so forth.
Okay, so if any of the students or teachers out there are interested, they can probably give you a call.
Sure.
298-5011. And our thanks to Donna Frenya for chatting with us today and explaining what happened to Katie.